Hi there, Agile friends. Get ready for the World Tour of Agile at the Agile Online Summit 2023. You can join us from October 24th to 26th for a global showcase of cutting-edge Agile practices and insights. Join us at agileonlinesummit.com. This year, we will be featuring some of the best work done around the world and world-class keynotes. You can check all of that at agileonlinesummit.com. But the best part is that your ticket is on us. That's right, it's free to attend and immerse yourself in the world of Agile excellence. Don't miss out on this opportunity to level up your skills and network with peers and industry experts. Mark your calendars and secure your spot at AOS 23 today by visiting agileonlinesummit.com. So get your free ticket or opt for the full digital pass that lets you keep all the conference videos forever and organize, why not, Agile learning sessions at work. You can get the full digital access at agileonlinesummit.com. I'll see you in the conference floor. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday, Success Thursday this week with Zach Stone. Hey, Zach, welcome back.
Hey, Vasco. Thank you for having me back again.
Absolutely. So, Zach, on Thursdays, we talk about what success means for us as Scrum Masters. But before we dive into that, we do want to know, what's your favorite retrospective format and why?
I don't have one. My favorite is the outcome of the retrospective, which is a bit of a cop-out, I'll admit. So if I had to put a name or label on one, I will give you an easy one, the Rosebud and Thorn. It's really simple. It's not too gimmicky, although I do like me a good Lord of the Rings retrospective. But it asks people to reflect on, something beautiful, something possible like growth, the bud, and then something painful that we should deal with, the thorn. And I find that the retrospective is, for me, as much a gauge of the team's well-being, their ability to communicate with each other and advocate, as it is an information gathering session. And so while I am facilitating with the team, I am, yes, really interested in what they have to say and what they're talking about and discussing, but I am also really paying attention to how they are communicating. What quality of the communication is it? Are people speaking to each other? Are they speaking at each other? Are they listening, or are they just waiting for their turn to talk? And those things, those indicators on a every 2-week basis, or sprints, and that I'm working these days, or every 2 weeks for my teams, it lets me know sort of a heartbeat of how the team is doing. So any retro will do, but I do like Rosebud and Thorn if I had to put a name on one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like that idea of putting the finger on the pulse of how the team is doing by just looking at their interactions, which also reminds me that we are responsible for the process, for the facilitation of the process of the retrospective.
Yes.
And that's actually something critical for us, right? Like to pay attention how those interactions happen during the retrospective. But the point that you made, that this is kind of a window into how they behave with each other outside the retrospective, is a very important point. It is a microcosm, right? And maybe one tip from me, one thing that I've seen working very well is that if you make sure that there's very little time, say a retrospective in half an hour, it's possible to do it. It just has to be prepared. It takes longer to prepare than a 1-hour retrospective, because you really need to be focused. But if you compress the time and you organize it, facilitate it so that the team does most of the work, you don't nearly speak at all, right? Like maybe you just raise your hand and say time is up or something like that. Then you really start to see how people react, because they get more impatient, right? So they are more raw, if you will, and they show a lot more how they feel towards each other, right? If somebody's got, I don't know how you would say it in English, right? Like if somebody's got something that they are bothered by, but haven't been talking about it, that will come up if you increase the pressure in the retrospective with a very simple technique, which is just a properly facilitated, much shorter retrospective. So I think that point that you made, that last point about retrospective being kind of a mirror or a window into how the team acts during the whole sprint, I think that's a very important point.
I also wonder if other Scrum Masters, delivery managers have been having a similar experience to me, when I came into my most recent role, it was March 2020, and the pandemic was just kicking off, the sort of isolation period in the United States. And I was told by my management, don't come in. You're going to work remote for a while, and we'll kind of see what happens. And I had been an in-person facilitator, working with teams in person with people spread across the world, but like largely in one space. And I could see their body language, and I could feel their energy. I could get a sense of, if they were angry or happy or sad. And I could feel it as I walked by them or in the session. You could just people can't hide that stuff if you can see their body language and read it. But when we went online, and I lost a lot of those cues, because people eventually got burned out with Zoom, and they'd turn off their camera, and we'd say, hey, let's turn on our camera for this or what have you. But eventually people hit a wall, and without those cues, everything is just tone. And I will say that I really had to adapt a lot of my strategies to change for that. It was a fundamental shift in how I facilitated my events, and I am still looking for better ways to do the work that I've been doing. But that was a big challenge for me, I will say, with especially the retrospective process, where we're really trying to bring out honest dialogue. I don't know if you've heard that from other people, but
I
that's
have
been your
felt
experience.
the same myself, so I can totally relate to that. And although I'm a big believer in remote work, it has a lot of advantages.
Absolutely.
I am also painfully aware that there are some clear disadvantages that need to be worked around. It's possible to work around, but in our role as Scrum Masters, it's a full-time job to work around those limitations.
100%. Remote work has been an incredible gift. I was able to travel the United States, do a road trip, find a new place to live. We have had really productive work with the remote work, but I really have had to step up and earn my bones, and try different approaches. We've tried recently a virtual office space to try to simulate being in a similar space together. We try a lot of different tactics, smart use of our cameras to not burn people out, but make sure we can see each other's faces. And I will purposely try to have very authentic sharing with people that's appropriate, but put myself out there to try to stir the dialogue a little bit, because I do think when we start to feel disconnected, it's easy for them to just kind of take the easier, safer route. Especially when you're online and you're disconnected. So by doing a little bit of like, hey, this is what's happening for me, this is something I've been struggling with, by doing a little bit of that modeling, it can really get people to open up where they might have just been willing to open up when you're sitting there in front of them in person. You got to do that little bit of an extra push for me, at least I've found.
It's more work for us, but it's also more rewarding if we get it right. So, Zach, now we turn our attention to success and what it means for us as Scrum Master. So share with us, what does success mean for you as a Scrum Master?
Well, I can tell you when I first started that when I was learning more about this system of Scrum and Agile work, that I'm embarrassed to say that success was a velocity and success was only predictability. And while those things are really important indicators, I have really changed my stance over time. And what I've begun to see with my teams, when I would really harp on velocity and I'd really harp on predictability, we would sometimes lose sight of why we were actually there, which was to build good software, to build things that people actually want to use, and not just, have a good sprint. And as I'm sure and I've talked many times, and had these conversations in this podcast, you can have a good sprint, but not be successful. You can have a good sprint, but make a really not great product. And so my understanding of sort of like adherence was a big part of my understanding of success, of like, hey, we did all the Scrum events, team. Like, we've gotten through all of them and we're doing really good. We're doing so good at having retrospectives, but we were losing the point of like, why were we having this retro? Why were we talking about these things? Why do we even use Scrum and Agile in the first place? And my teams, where I have focused on the work and we have focused on the product and the customer, have been so much more successful, where the events just sort of happen because they're a vehicle to get where we want to go. We're not having the events because the event is the important thing. And that was a big shift for me in my first couple of years doing this work, of like, hey, man, the stand-up is great and the retro is great and the refinement is great and all that stuff is good. But if you're not building good stuff and the team feels like a ticket factory, this is not a win. This is not good Scrum or good Agile. You're not even sort of meeting the goal. So adherence, shifting from an adherence mindset to a goal, customer, product oriented mindset, where the work became the goal, the most important thing. And through that work, we reached better metrics. That is my redefinition of success, thinking more in a system to support our end goals, not thinking of our end goals being the vehicle to get there.
I really like that shift from adherence to goal and customer-oriented mindset, the way you phrased it. Also because it brings up one of the things that I find missing in many of the teams that I work with, which is the lack of a goal, right? If we see reaching a goal as success for us and for the team, and the goal isn't there, then that's assignment number one. What's the goal, people? And very often it gets forgotten exactly because of the adherence mindset. Hey, we don't need a goal. We have a sprint plan, and the sprints are always 2 weeks and we get stuff done. So that should be enough, right?
100%. And I have been there. And so to anybody listening, I am not judging you, but I am inviting you to think about if your organization or if you are really attached to this adherence model and how much you're really getting out of it. Because I ultimately was really not getting that much in the long term. People really learned a lot about Scrum, but we weren't using it as well as we could to reach our goal. And now, these days, I'm working with a really great product owner who's actually newer to the role. They came from customer success. And the great thing about that is that their whole mindset is about the customer. And we were working for a few months to really establish a roadmap. And recently this new product owner nailed it down. And there was a big shift in the team's excitement level because they came to the leads group and they said, hey, look, I got this thing I want to try. Let's do some guerrilla marketing. Let's try to follow this roadmap. Here's the customer, here's their need. Let's really try to solve this for them. And Vasco, the excitement was like a light bulb turned on for all of us. Because we were like, hey, we're waiting on this roadmap. We're trying to find a roadmap. We'll let it slide a little bit. We'll work on things in the background until we get this nailed down. Let's not throw a ton of money at something we don't know is valuable. And so when we finally hit this point of customer focused, we're going to solve a major problem for the customer. Oh man, everybody was on fire, including me. I was super ignited. In fact, I was so ignited that it was a juxtaposition to just how unignited I had been and didn't realize it. And so that simple framing of the customer problem and our PO coming and saying, hey, I've got a direction. I think we can really solve for this. Let's get creative. That was it. It was like a big bang for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that idea. Clear product goals skyrocket team motivation. Great takeaway. Thank you for sharing that, Zach.
Yep, absolutely.
Part of a successful Scrum Master job is to help the product owner. Tomorrow we explore that critical role in Scrum, the product owner role. Tune in to learn about product owner anti-patterns, what you can do to help the product owner, and a real-life example of what a great product owner is and what made it so. Tomorrow on our Friday Product Owner episode. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.